How does filtering work? Learning from Tesla's bioweapon defense mode. The first minute I'll give you the answer to this question, and after we'll go deeper into details. You may have heard Elon Musk announce a feature on the Tesla a few years ago called a bioweapon defense mode. Tesla says you could survive a military-grade biological weapons attack in your Tesla. The big question is it protective against the coronavirus? His bioweapon defense mode is actually just an upgraded filter. It's called a HEPA filter. These are what airlines are calling their enhanced air purification systems. HEPA filters are what hospitals use to clean their air with all the sick people around. And if you think an N95 mask keeps you safe from the coronavirus, then a HEPA filter most definitely does, because it's actually even more effective than the N95 filter. And if that's all you wanted to know, you could stop here. But if you want to dig deeper into what HEPA filters are, why they're better than N95 masks, and a glance into the principles behind filtration, then keep on watching. The Institute of Environmental Sciences and Technology defines what a high-efficiency particulate air, or HEPA, filter has to do. It must filter at least 99.97% of contaminants of particles that are 0.3 microns in size. This is actually the most difficult size to capture. It's also called the MPPS, most penetrating particle size. Why? We'll talk about that later. If you look at a filter, let's take this one made by 3M, you'll see that it lists some measurement of filtration ability. This one doesn't say the word HEPA. It tells you something about the microparticle performance rating though, MPR. The more commonly used abbreviation is MERV, Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value, with higher values being better. You'll see this term used a lot with HVAC, these large ventilatory units for buildings you see on top, because it was a skill designed by the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers in 1987. Basically, they give you an idea how well the filter can do with small particles. If you want to filter smaller stuff, you need a higher MERV. Well, what is HEPA then? Why didn't 3M put it on its filter? Because it wasn't HEPA. HEPA is almost off the charts for MERV. You won't see MERV and HEPA together because HEPA basically supersedes MERV. MERV goes all the way up to 17 and then it becomes HEPA. 3M filters go up to MPR of 2800 to the MERV of 14, which is still quite a few grades below HEPA grade filters. And guess what? These are not cheap. A 2-pack runs for $60 on Amazon. That's because HEPA filters have to be very fine inside. The fibers have to be very finely woven. It's expensive to make them so fine as still allow air to pass through. They have to have such a tight interface of fibers so they catch all these small particles. Remember, 0.3 microns is so small. You could put 600 of them end to end, and they'll still be as big as one strand of your hair. HEPA filters are mechanical filters. They don't require energy or chemicals, they just use pure physics. The diagram here lists the 3 main ways they catch particles. The gist of it is that the fibers catch the particles it hits. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. You may be wondering, if HEPA filters are so good, why don't medical personnel use them? Well, they do. They're called PAPRs, Powered Air Purifying Respirators. They're just not used in the medical field, but lab personnel use them, welders as well. This man is wearing one that'd be similar to what we wear inside a hospital. I've used something like this. You may know mask classifications like N95, N99, and 100. They correspond to 95, 99, and 99.97% filtration of particles 0.3 microns or larger. That's what's commonly said. But to compare them to PAPRs, we have to use APF terminology, assigned protection factor. An APF of 10 means the inside concentration of the particle is 1/10 the amount of the outside concentration. An example of using a mask for pollution, you would reduce the ppm by 10 times. Does that sound very good? Well, if you look at pollution, if you reduce the concentration by 10, you could go from 350, which is firmly in the hazard zone, something you might see on a bad day in the winter in Beijing or India, to 35, which is good air quality. If you want more protection, you could wear a PAPR. A loose-fitting PAPR is the one on the bottom left. It's actually very comfortable, albeit it's somewhat noisy inside because the air flows out by your ears. It doesn't make you claustrophobic. You don't feel like you can't breathe because so much air is being piped into your headpiece. People could see your full face and smile. It feels very normal. And in hot weather, it's wonderful because you get a breeze. If you look, the APF rating for the lowest PAPR, this loose fading headpiece, is 25, meaning the inside concentration of particles is 1/25th that of the outside. They do go to much higher APFs, even to 10,000 if you use a scuba device, meaning the air supply is self-contained. But the big question nowadays is whether or not these things, mass, PAPRs, HEPA filters, work for particles so small like the novel 2019 coronavirus. How big is the novel 2019 coronavirus? SARS-CoV-2? Well, estimates vary, but in this New England Journal of Medicine article, they measured the virus using an electron microscope. They found it to have a diameter ranging from 60 to 140 nanometers, which is 0.06 to 0.14 microns. It's much smaller than the 0.3 micron figures we mentioned before about filtration, so these particles will just go straight through, right? Well, scientists don't think so. They think the virus doesn't travel by itself. It's like P. Diddy, always needing an entourage. The virus will be associated with water droplets or other substances, so it'll actually be bigger in size than just 0.14 microns. The most commonly pushed idea of transmission of coronavirus is droplet form, and droplets are very big, 1 to 5 millimeters, or 1,000 to 5,000 microns. Enormous compared to what any of these filters can do. However, if its aerosolized meaning could be spread through the air, first off, the coronavirus can travel much farther than just 6 feet, and secondly, it would be a lot smaller. How small? Well, this letter from two researchers trying to discuss the exact topic back in March. They said in a bioaerosol, as in an aerosol made by us human beings, not by a machine, are 0.3 to 100 microns. So even if there is aerosolized protection, where the limits of what our filters can do, N95, N99, N100, commonly are noted to have filtration capability of particles 0.3 microns and above. But actually, just like for HEPA filters, this is their most penetrating particle size, ppps, not the limit to how small they could filter. Here's a graph showing the efficiency of HEPA filtration. As you can see, the efficiency drops around 0.3 microns. This is where filtration is the worst, though most particles are allowed to pass through. And this is why. There are three main filtering mechanisms. How the particles of the filter, the fibers, physically catch the particles trying to get through. You can imagine a particle trying to get through like a surfer catching a wave. Inertial impaction is where the particle is so big and heavy, it continues to go straight even a wave turns, and so the particle hits the fiber and gets stuck. Diffusion is where the particle is small, it doesn't really get swept up in the wave, it just wanders around, and it randomly hits the fiber and gets stuck. And interception is where the particle isn't so big so that it doesn't follow the flow, the wave, but even though the wave curves over the fiber, the particle is still too big to clear the fiber, and that's how it gets stuck. Sort of like when you make that right turn at the light and you turn too sharply and your wheel hits the curb. Interception, however, is not that great with smaller particles. It isn't good enough to make up for the lack of diffusion filtering ability. So the lowest point, the point of maximal penetration of a particle, is around 0.3 microns for these physical filters like the HEPA filter, N95, N99, N100 mass. And possibly this is the size of an aerosolized coronavirus particle? Which brings us to our last question. What if I wanted something better? This is a good deal I spotted on eBay, a used filter, much cheaper than they are now. You want to buy it? You may think, seriously? But HEPA filters don't actually expire. They don't need to be changed because they've stopped filtering well. In fact, they actually filter better because they have a lot of gunk stuck inside. It makes them more dense inside, so they can filter even more particles from the air flowing through. The reason they had to be changed is they require too much pressure to pull air through, so it becomes an efficiency problem. You spend too much on electricity. But if you did want something new, you could get an ULPA filter, ultra low particle air filter. It's 99.9995% efficient at filtering particles 0.2 microns, so even smaller. And if you recall the efficiency curve, the 0.12 microns is where it is the worst, meaning you get better filtration at sizes bigger and smaller. So if you compare the two, HEPA is the worst at 0.3 microns, which is a size that would correspond to the lower end of how big a bioaerosolized particle is, which is a real issue because there is evidence coronavirus can be aerosolized. ULPA is worse at 0.12 microns, which is within the range of sizes for the coronavirus traveling by itself, without anything attached to it. And it seems relatively unlikely it could travel by itself without an entourage, so it seems we're fine with this aspect. Coming back to Tesla and their bioweapon defense mode. Is it good? Well, I guess it all depends how much protection you want. HEPA is a lot of protection. They're very expensive. This air purifier is $500. And ULPA, well, they don't even list the price. As I say, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. Though if you do find out the price, please leave a comment. I'd love to know. This is where I hiked in the Himalayas years ago. The air is beautifully clean. And for us to have clean air, free of pollutants and contaminants, we need filters, which can come in the form of a mask, a portable device like a PAPR, or a self-driving air purification system called a Tesla. These filters have numbers called a maximal penetrating particle size, where they are worse at filtering, and the HEPA number comes awfully close to the size of aerosolized particles of the coronavirus. And there is something better called ULPA that would make one sleep well, but I have no idea at what cost. It's not readily available. Thank you for listening today. I hope you learned something about air filtration and the coronavirus.